I have two questions I've written down. In light of the fact that it offers your customers a flexible capacity, which I think you really call schedule, beneficial cost. I've heard some numbers and it's beneficial
Mhm,
and quality.
mhm.
What is the reason? What pushback do you get? It sounds like a no brainer. There is no such thing. But anyway, it sounds like a no brainer. Why do people say nope?
Yeah, so a couple reasons, but yes, the primary value adds that we offer are obviously our flexibility in schedule and cost. But really, what we try to add that nobody else in the market has is that we really try to help our clients actually improve their processes from a quality standpoint. And so generally, if we're not successful, either if a client doesn't want to try us, a lot of the times it's because they're worried about. So there is a dynamic in general in this industry where engineers really want to do all their own project from start to finish. They don't like to work behind somebody else. They don't like to work in front of somebody else. And a lot of that is because of, I mean, if you imagine you're working, generally they're working in CAD files, CAM files. And so if you're working behind somebody and they don't work the way you do, neither of you guys are following any kind of higher level processes that your business has agreed upon, then a lot of times you're just redoing what they've done because they didn't do it the way you would have done it. I mean, it's almost like if you're a framer and you're picking up today with a wall half built by a different framer the day before, and they do things differently. That's what it's often like in CAD. And unfortunately, most companies don't have an engineering leader that both understands the technical implications of that and the management and change management or authority to say, hey, this is the way that all of us at this company are going to do these things. And so what we struggle with clients is if they don't have process in place in their engineering departments or a decision maker who understands whether they do or not, it's very difficult for us to then come in and give them a result that is usable, that they're happy with. And usually it's an owner or somebody who's not in engineering making decision from a cost standpoint or schedule standpoint to hire us. And then 3 months down the road, their internal engineers are then looking at what we've done and having to engineer it to production and saying, this is terrible. We hate this. This is awful. We're having to work behind them and we had no say in how they did what we're doing. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but
No,
usually it's that internal pushback from our internal customers that aren't the decision makers.
yeah. Well, you kind of mentioned
Mm.
something that leads to my other question, which is a little disjointed, but um, you do you do shop drawings? I
Yes.
guess. Okay. So there is a creative element in that, an
Hmm.
engineering element. We're going to cantilever this huge desk and you're going to have to look at material strengths and put an I-beam in there or whatever else you got to do. There's that creative. I'm just amazed. I'm just always amazed when you can outsource creative because
Hmm.
that's, unless you found a way to systemize creativity.
So, and that is the biggest obstacle we uh, uh, encounter is that too many people leave everything up to creative. And so and the reason is because if it's truly creative, meaning that there is no system to it, there's no logic to it, it's just uh what solution did this engineer come up with? I'm never going to come up with the same thing as another person. Um So that's generally how most mill workers will work. That's how a lot of people will work, right? Is, hey, I have a really skilled engineer. We trust him. We trust that what he comes up with, where he's going to work through and make it go through the shop. He's going to go talk to the lead fabricator and they're going to agree on a method, right? That's great. The problem is when you try to scale a business, think about anything. Imagine if you thought that way about accounting and you said, well, I don't know how we're going to do our taxes this year, but I know that Tammy in accounting is creative. If you suddenly try to change accountants, she's gonna be like, wow, your last person was really creative in a different way than I would, right? Um, and that doesn't necessarily work.
Creative bookkeeping is not a good thing.
Yeah, but and the same thing with fabrication, right? If you were like, oh
Right.
man, this cabinet assembler was really creative with how he decided where those dowels should go. Um, And it's hard for people to find the logic. And so that also translates to it's very difficult for you to hire and train people and teach them, because what you're saying is the only way you can really be good at this is if you've done it for 40 years and you've had the experience that I've had, which is what informs my creative. All of that to say that we often encounter that with clients where they're like, hey, we've got this really custom thing that needs to be figured out. And so the problem comes is if we're creative in a vacuum and then we present what we came up with to the client and it's not what they would have wanted to do. So the important part is that we work with our clients and understand, hey, who are the creatives, decision makers in your business? And we want to make sure that we pull them in to inform us and discuss, hey, here's some options that we creatively come up with, but we need to know from you as a client, hey, are you going to build this in a way that is mostly CNC machine? Or do you have guys on the bench that like to do certain operations? Are you installing it yourself? Are you subcontracting that out? What type of machinery do you have? Do you have V-grooving abilities? There's a lot of factors that we just have to ask the right questions and talk to the right people in our client's organization to then get them the result they need. And a lot of times that's the coaching of our clients is really the differentiator for us, because our competition, a lot of that, you can go get outsourced drafting. And the way it's generally going to work is you send them the architectural documents and the scope. And then a few weeks later, you get CAD files back and they may or may not be what you want or need. And what we're trying to do is actually work with you as a partner and say, hey, look, we're trying to be the foundation that your entire organization, because these shop drawings are what the entire organization uses from there going forward. Nobody looks at the scope anymore. Nobody looks at the architectural drawings. The shop drawings we produce get updated with field dimensions later that says, okay, this is now how long that wall is. They get updated with revisions from the architect. They get updated with accurate materials. And then engineering releases those to production as here's what you're actually going to make. And so we want to make sure that they're not restarting. And you mentioned, I think this is a good time to segue into, you asked before we started recording the difference between drafting and engineering. And so those are terms that are generic outside of millwork, but within millwork, there's many different terms for them. But generally what that means, drafting is everything related to CAD of shop drawings from when a job is awarded to the millworker to approval from the client of those drawings is the way, it generally is. So meaning we're producing drawings of what we're going to make that tell you what it's going to look like, the materials and stuff. But within the millwork organization, a lot of times that goes to a separate team that are the engineers, that are the ones who actually do the figuring out of making cut lists, cut bills, CNC programs of actually how the shop is going to manufacture that. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, those drafters don't have the same experience and knowledge or process standards that the engineers do. So they might, and I'll see this for years and years and years, they'll draw things that engineers say, we don't actually build it that way. So after they get the drafting done, the engineer will say, yep, that's wrong. We're going to change it and use this material. We're going to change it and fabricate it this way. And so those internal structures that are just inherent to our client that we don't have control over do affect our success working with them.
No, I thank you for that. I mean, it sounds to me like it's very much building a relationship and learning each other over time.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've found.
Yeah.
And what we've tried to differentiate is, leveraging my experience and being here to be able to communicate and speak our clients' language. I was in their position. I was the engineering manager, basically battling my owner saying, no, we don't want to outsource this because we're going to get bad quality. And so now I'm speaking on the other side of that, like, hey, here's why you should work with us. And I understand your struggles and we can help work through that.